Welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Podcast on the Brink, your weekly dose of Indiana University basketball news and discussion. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. Podcast on the Brink is a joint production of the Assembly Call and Inside the Hall. For complete coverage of IU basketball, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com. Hey, have you heard? It's time to break through with Indiana football. The 2017 season is underway, and we want to invite you to come check out head coach Tom Allen and your Indiana Hoosiers at home this season at beautiful Memorial Stadium. Tickets are available at iuhoosiers.com, and youth tickets are only $10. Go Hoosiers. Break through. On this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink, we take a short hiatus from our tour around the Big Ten to talk about recruiting as the fall recruiting period has begun. And it started off with a bang for your Indiana Hoosiers as Indiana gets a commitment from Jake Forrester, a forward in the class of 2018 who took an official visit and committed soon thereafter. We will talk about Jake's game, talk about that recruitment, and then talk about the recruiting in the class of 2019 where the Hoosiers have enough scholarships left. And then dive into, obviously, Romeo Langford, the other big name waiting in the class of 2018. All of that and more on this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink. Hey, real quick, a word about this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events because with SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There really is nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have SeatGeek on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way that I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and like I just mentioned, with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats to anything that I want to go to. I actually used SeatGeek to buy tickets earlier this year to see Yogi play here in Dallas. I bought my wife concert tickets for the summer. So SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. They save you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. Now, here's how to get an even better deal, which is Podcast on the Brink listeners get $20 off of your first SeatGeek purchase. Download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K today, and you'll get $20 back from SeatGeek. That's promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K. And now, on with this week's episode of Podcast on the Brink. All right, Alex. Well, obviously, news broke yesterday. Archie Miller got another commitment in the class of 2018, Jake Forrester, who visited over the weekend, and it was thought that he might take a few of his other scheduled visits before he made a decision. But all of a sudden, he posted on Twitter that he was ready to go. Clearly, the visit made a big impression on him, and Indiana has landed a 6'8", 6'9", maybe 6'10" guy, depending on where you look, who has a high motor, seems like a really hardworking guy, kind of a banger down low. Tell me what you know about Jake Forrester and what you think of the newest IU commit.
Yeah, I haven't seen him play in person. If I did, I don't remember. I was at the EYBL session in Indianapolis, but he wasn't a guy I was watching at that point in time. So I have had a chance to watch him on video quite a bit. The thing that stands out to me the most is just his motor, how hard he runs the floor, his ability to block some shots. And just overall how hard he plays. And, like you said, a little bit surprising, I think, that it happened so quickly, considering he had scheduled 5 official visits. But from talking to his dad last night, Dwight, they had such a great time on the visit and felt convinced that was the right spot for Jake and were ready to pull the trigger. I think the thing that stands out the most to me is just how well he potentially fits in with what Archie and the new coaching staff want to do with the pack line defense, because he's a guy that can really make up ground quickly, recover, switch ball screens, just kind of be active around the rim and guard multiple positions. So I think that's one reason that they felt comfortable bringing him in and using another scholarship. just because you kind of looked at, I think a lot of people looked at the situation and said, well, should they save a scholarship for 2019? But I feel like that they felt that Forrester was a guy that can help them next year. And that's the reason that they brought him in. And just from talking to his dad as well, I mean, they envision Jake having a role in the rotation next year. So just, kind of amazing how quickly Archie has closed on a lot of these guys. I mean, we had obviously Jerome Hunter and Demezy Anderson back-to-back in July, then Robert Finnessy in August, and now this situation with Jake Forrester in September. Not a lot of drama in terms of waiting till the signing period. These guys are tweeting out their decisions and getting on board, and not a lot of work left to do now for Indiana in the 2018 class.
And according to basically all the rankings I've looked at, this puts Indiana, right now anyway, with obviously still a lot of commitments to come, but as a top 5 class, which is a great spot to be in for Archie. Now, let's talk about the whole 2019 issue, because I know people have looked at that, and Indiana's in position with a lot of players, and I think a lot of us as fans, want to look and see a lot of scholarships available for that class, because you just look at all the 5 stars that Indiana's mentioned with, and I did a quick hit episode of the Assembly Call a couple of weeks back saying that I would like to see Archie and the staff be patient, and this is when talk had started to come out about Jake Forrester visiting and possibly being a guy who would commit, and that was just my thought that it would be good to be patient. But obviously Archie Miller and his staff know more and have more experience in recruiting in one hair follicle on their head than I do in my entire body, and so I know for me, when you see a guy like this, this wasn't a last-second commitment. It wasn't like, a desperation scholarship offer, late, with the season approaching. This is a guy they really targeted. They brought him on campus, gave him the best pitch, got him and his family excited. I mean, his dad sounded so excited just reading the article that you wrote on Inside the Hall. And so for me, that's all I need to get behind this and to think that this is a good move and to really think that Jake is going to prosper as a Hoosier, because it's clear Archie Miller doesn't do anything just kind of off the cuff. He's got a plan. This is a guy they targeted. And that to me makes this a little bit different than maybe some of the quote-unquote reaches we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years. And frankly, if Indiana's in a position now where Jake Forrester is a guy that you're quote-unquote reaching on, that's a pretty good position to be in from a recruiting standpoint. So, I just kind of wanted to clear that up, because I know I had said that I wanted them to be patient. But now that this is here, I'm fully on board because I trust the plans that the coaches have. And until they give me a reason not to, I think it's smart to trust their plan. Are you kind of on that same page, or is there maybe something I'm missing?
I don't think there's anything you're missing. I mean, obviously the scholarships are a consideration, but even going back to the previous coaching staff, I mean, we had, I feel like, these conversations all the time about, hey, where's the scholarship going to come from? And it seemed to always work itself out, whether that be guys leaving early to go to the NBA, where, I think a lot of people are looking at this roster and saying, hey, is there anyone on this roster that's going to leave early? At this point, we don't think so, but things can change. Just depending on what kind of, maybe a guy breaks out and has a great season, has a chance to go pro. Maybe a couple of guys decide that, they want to go play somewhere else for more playing time. You have to, as much as you have to balance the scholarships, the coaching staff's also looking at this they're losing 5 players after this year, and they want to be able to, this season's going to be a transition in itself. You're transitioning to a new coaching staff, you're transitioning to a new system, the coaching staff's getting to know the players, and vice versa. Next year, it's going to be kind of like a reboot 2.0, because you've got, 5 guys that are leaving the program, and I think they want to be prepared and bring in a solid foundation class. And that's what they've done with these 4 guys. Obviously, Romeo's still kind of lingering out there. I expect them to continue to pursue him. And anytime there's a 5-star kid that's interested in your program, you figure out a way to make it work. I think that's just kind of how it works at this level of college basketball. Indiana is always going to want to bring in the best talent it can, and you figure out the numbers later. So, I would not second guess or question the coaching staff's approach on this. I think it's pretty clear at this point they know what they're doing. They've landed 3 top 100 players in obviously Finnessy, Hunter, and Anderson, and then Jake Forrester, depending on what you look at the rankings. He's somewhere there in the top 150, top 175 range, but he's not a guy that you're bringing in to be necessarily a starter from day one. He's someone you're bringing in to give yourself more depth up front, a guy that can, maybe give you some energy off the bench and block some shots. And he's obviously a guy that they've targeted because they feel that he can fit in their system. So, they're entitled, obviously, to bring in the guys that they feel like can help them win. And he's obviously one of them. So I don't really see any reason to question the approach on this one.
So is it safe to say now for the rest of the class of 2018, Archie and the staff are going to be extremely patient? I mean, there's one scholarship left open. Of course, Romeo Langford's going to have one if he wants one. I suppose if Darius Garland, the 5-star point guard Indiana has been involved with, if he decides that he wants to come to Bloomington, maybe then you have to figure something else out. But otherwise, it's kind of focus on Romeo, of course, and obviously maybe keep the lines open with Darius. But then otherwise, I think we'll see Archie and the staff lay a lot of groundwork with the class of 2019. As we saw yesterday when the recruiting period opened and they met with Keon Brooks and they're going to be meeting with Trace Jackson Davis. Is that kind of what you're envisioning now for the rest of this recruiting cycle?
Absolutely. I mean, you've obviously got to stay in the Romeo sweepstakes until the end. I don't think you bow out on Darius Garland either. He's obviously a top 5 or top 10 player in the country. If he wants to come to your program, you figure out a way to get that done. And beyond that, I would agree. I don't think there's going to be any other 2018 ads unless it's a guy that you really feel is going to be a huge difference maker in your program, just because you can't afford to take obviously 6 or 7 guys. They've got 4 right now. Obviously, Race Thompson will also kind of come online, so to speak, next season after sitting out this year as a redshirt. So they're going to have a pretty big turnover on the roster going into next season. But I think they've set themselves up pretty well with this class to kind of be that foundation building class. You may not have unless they get a Romeo Langford or Darius Garland, you may not have that 1 or 2 and done player, but you're going to have that player that maybe 3 or 4 years down the line when we're talking about going into a season this time of year. We're saying, Indiana's got 3 or 4 juniors or seniors that have really been kind of through the battles of the Big Ten, and that's why they're being projected as a team with a chance to win the Big Ten. I think that's the goal with this class.
Last comment I want to make on Forrester. His height has been the subject of a lot of speculation. Some people say it's 6'7", 6'8". His dad said he's close to 6'10". One thing I haven't seen much dispute about is that his wingspan is at least 7 foot or longer. Right. And isn't that more important? Isn't the wingspan, like the toe to fingertip length, more important than toe to head as you're kind of projecting guys forward?
Absolutely. I mean, you're not blocking shots with your head, so you're blocking shots with your hands. So if you got a 7 foot guy who's one of the knocks on Cody Zeller was he was 7 foot or close to it, but his arms weren't as long, and that was kind of a thing that the NBA guys kind of picked him apart for. Obviously didn't matter because he's gone on to be the number 4 pick and have a really productive NBA career. But I think the standing reach and the wingspan are really what you look for when you're looking for a big guy and a potential shot blocker. And I don't know, I obviously haven't measured Jake Forrester personally. I don't know his standing reach. His wingspan's reported 7 foot, but I've seen enough of him on video to tell you that he challenges and gets after shots, and he did it in the EYBL, which is the highest level of grassroots AAU basketball. Did it for the PSA Cardinals, which has produced some really good players over the years, including Thomas Bryant. So, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a productive college player. Is he going to be a superstar? Is he going to be a surefire NBA guy? I don't think we're ready to say that yet, but I think he's going to be a guy that fits in the system, fits what they want to do. And I think, a couple of years down the line, Indiana fans are going to be saying this is a guy that really helped the program.
Boy, and I tell you what, Indiana has some challenges this year, depth-wise in terms of size. But you start projecting forward next year, where you have Deron Davis at 6'10", and Clifton Moore at 6'10", and Jake Forrester at 6'9", and Race Thompson at 6'8", Juwan Morgan 6'7", Justin Smith 6'7", Jerome Hunter 6'7", Demezy Anderson 6'6". I'm probably forgetting somebody. But, Indiana is going to have a tall, long, athletic team as soon as next year, and that's going to be really interesting to see just in terms of the combinations and what Archie can do defensively. As long as one of the point guards steps up and can get everything going offensively, just from an athleticism and a defensive potential standpoint, you start looking at the roster for next season, and it makes you salivate.
Absolutely. I think they're off to a really good start recruiting wise. Haven't left a lot of drama for guys like me that like to write these announcement primers or cover live announcements. Going back, I remember the Cody Zeller announcement was a big deal back in 2010. Covered a couple other commitments over the years. Not going to be any of those this year unless something happens with Romeo in the fall or the spring. But that's they've set themselves up well, and I think the future looks bright in Bloomington.
Yes, the future does look bright, and I mentioned some of those prospects in the 2019 class, and clearly a couple of them are major priorities for Archie and his staff, and that's the two in-state kids, Keon Brooks and Trace Jackson Davis. And I believe, confirm this, but yesterday, which was the first day that Archie and the staff were able to go out and meet with players, they were right there in Fort Wayne to see Keon Brooks Jr., right? That was the first stop that they made?
Yeah, actually, they could. The recruiting period, as the NCAA calls it, began on September 9th, which was actually Saturday. But obviously, the Indiana staff was tied up at that point because they had Jake Forrester on campus. So he left Sunday, and then a lot of times these recruiting periods, basically how that works is you can have in-home visits during that time with prospects who are obviously eligible for in-home visits, and I think those are obviously upperclassmen, guys who are in their senior year right now that they could have an in-home visit with. Whereas with the younger kids, like a Keon Brooks or a Trace Jackson Davis, they can go to their high school and watch them in a workout or an open gym. So, yeah, they were at up at Fort Wayne North on Monday morning to see Keon Brooks Jr. His dad, Keon Sr., confirmed to me yesterday via text message. They were in early, and I'm guessing that was a workout or an open gym type situation. They were also, Demezy Anderson told me yesterday that they were scheduled to come see him. They're going to see Jerome Hunter this week. They're also going to see Robert Finnessy. Trendon Watford told me today that he expects Indiana in this week, and Trace Jackson Davis, his stepfather Ray, told me yesterday that they were expecting Indiana yesterday after school for an open gym type of thing. Michigan State as well, and so a busy time. For coaches, they like to get a lot of work done in this time period up until practice starts because, once the season gets underway and practice is going, you kind of have to really have a set schedule on when you can get out. Whereas, these first couple weeks is always pretty active of the recruiting period for them to get out. But this recruiting period runs now through November 6th, I think, and there's a dead period for a little bit, and then it opens back up November 10th all the way really through the end of the season. There's a few dead periods in there where a dead period is basically where you can't recruit off campus. You can have guys on campus, but you can't recruit off campus. So
and you can text them and stay in contact, right?
Exactly. It's just not, you just can't go off campus. Same thing with a quiet period. You cannot go recruiting off campus. I believe there's the NCAA has quiet periods, recruiting periods, dead periods. It's my understanding. Actually, I think a dead period, a kid can come onto campus, but I don't know that you can contact them. So they can obviously come visit your school, but you're not supposed to have any contact with them. So there's not a lot of dead periods actually even on the calendar. So those aren't really all that applicable, but now open right now is a recruiting period where coaches can go off campus and evaluate prospects at their schools and have in-home visits as well.
So you're talking about these workouts, like they went and saw an open gym or a workout with Keon Brooks.
Yeah. How
do those work? Like, does Archie call the school and say, like, hey, we have time, we can come in today, and then they schedule some kind of open gym? Or is it just, it's already something the school has going on, and Archie and the staff are just coming to watch, like, a workout or an open gym that's already planned?
Yeah, it's usually already planned for the most part. Excuse me. I'm sure there's instances where schools have, working with the high school coach, where schools have kind of set something up on a certain time to kind of fit in with the schedule of the college coach. Yeah. However, typically it's not just like for Keon Brooks. It's not like they're going to go watch just Keon Brooks. I mean, there's going to be other kids that play at the school. It could be an open gym. I've gone to New Albany's open gyms before where coaches have come to watch Romeo Langford and other guys that are playing on the team, kids that are playing for the freshman team or JV team are kind of mixed in there. It's basically everyone, who everyone's there to watch, but it's it's a school organized type event. The coaches are really just there for observation, and more or less it's just to kind of get your face in front of the recruit, let them know that you're there. So much in recruiting, going to the evaluation periods in the summer is just letting a kid know that you're engaged and interested in them. It stood out to me that when I was talking to Trace Jackson Davis' stepfather a couple weeks ago, he told me that Indiana was at every game that he played this summer. So that tells me that they're keep paying attention, kind of keeping tabs on who's there. And as many times as you can get your face in front of a recruit to let them know that you're serious about them, the better in a lot of cases.
Do you think that one of the benefits of having so many members of the class of 2018 already committed, you talked about how Archie's going to meet with Demezi and going to see Jerome Hunter and going to see Robert Finnessy. Like Archie and the coaches now can really spend a lot of time nurturing the relationships with guys who are already committed. And I would have to think, if they still had, say, 3 scholarships to fill, and they're, having to go out and recruit a lot of guys, that's obviously time now that they can't spend with guys who have already committed. And I wonder if sometimes, certain coaches, certain staffs, if you get a commitment, maybe you take that guy for granted. You don't build the relationship as much while you're out trying to get another guy. And if that's the reason why we see some decommitments. But I would think that this really gives Archie and the staff an opportunity to really solidify the relationships with all the guys committed for 2018, while obviously they still focus on Romeo and to a certain extent Darius Garland too. Do you think that matters? Do you see that as a benefit at all?
It's a benefit because if you get this late in the game, we're now 2 months from signing day and you have no commitments. You're starting to wonder, are the guys that I've targeted, the guys that I really want for my program, they haven't committed now. Am I doing something wrong? Am I not going to get these guys? And then, you get to the situation of, do I go all in on this guy, or do I kind of, there's two other guys that we kind of like, but, we don't want them as much, but, if we don't get our main guy, we got to have the relationships here. And then all of a sudden you get in the situation where you're having to kind of be 3 places at once, or, you have 3 different guys you got to call or text every day. And, like you said, you get these guys committed, and you can kind of, you never relax in recruiting, but you can say, hey, these guys are coming, and we can move on to building the relationships even stronger, and also kind of focusing on future classes. And obviously Romeo's still out there, so they're going to keep the foot on the gas there. But I think it's really good to have the number of commitments that Indiana has at this point, because you're not putting a lot of pressure on yourself as you get closer to signing day, and you kind of have the guys you want already committed.
Obviously, with a guy like Romeo Langford, who has, basically his choice of what blue blood school he wants to go to, there's not a great sense of urgency, and no one thinks that recruitment is going to end before the spring. And so if Indiana were to, say to Romeo, here's a scholarship offer, take it or leave it right now, he'd probably look at Archie Mero like he was crazy and move on and go somewhere else. But, a guy like Jake Forrester, who's, kind of a 3-star guy, maybe a low 4-star guy. And I even saw in an article with him, I don't remember who wrote it, but he mentioned something about how, Indiana was his best offer, a high major offer. That was his best one. Do you think at all that when he gets on campus, is there a sense of fear of loss, for a guy like that, where it's like, man, I better not take these other commitments. I better make my commitment now while this scholarship offer is open. And, do coaches play on that at all? Like, I don't think that there was like a take it or leave it with Forrester this weekend. But do you think that plays into a commitment like Forrester's that comes sooner than you think, that maybe he's not a Romeo Langford where they're going to save a scholarship for him until the spring, and he's thinking, man, I want to come here. I love this school. This is my best offer. I got to take it now while it's there.
I think that happens. I don't necessarily know that that's what happened here or that's what happened with any of the other kids, but, one of the things that immediately popped in my head when they offered Aaron Henry. Remember that Sunday night after the first evaluation period, they offered Aaron Henry, and everyone thought maybe he's going to commit. And then the next day, boom, boom, they get Demezi Anderson and Jerome Hunter back to back, and it's like all of a sudden they're out with Aaron Henry. It's a lot of cases it's this is a business. Not only are the coaches looking at it from that perspective, the kids have to look at it from that perspective. And if you really want to go somewhere and that the school's not going to hold your spot forever, where there's not a lot of guys that just have kind of an open open-ended offer where you can commit whenever you want to. Obviously, Romeo Langford has that luxury, but let's say you got into, with a guy like Robert Finney, if you got into late October and he hadn't committed and he was still kind of dragging along, I mean, if you need a point guard and you're Indiana, of course you're going to go push for other guys. So, I think it kind of works both ways. Coaches have to be honest with kids and say, hey, you're the guy we really want, but we also have to kind of cover ourselves. If you're not ready to commit, we're going to have to look elsewhere. And kids also have to kind of, figure out, is this something I really want to do? And if I do, I might as well take it now. I mean, what's the point? If you know where you want to go, if you have a strong feeling that that's something you want to do, you're better off in most cases going ahead and taking the offer. Because as we saw with Aaron Henry, it seemed like he was kind of wanting the Indiana offer for so long. He gets it, and then all of a sudden, the other two guys commit like right after that, and it's like he's kind of back to square one. Not like he ended up in a bad situation, obviously going to Michigan State, but just an example of kind of how you target guys at the same position that maybe aren't a 5-star kid, and it's really kind of first come, first served basis in a lot of those instances.
Is that one Indiana's going to regret, you think, now that Henry's up in Michigan State?
I don't think so. I mean, nothing against Aaron Henry. I like him a lot. I mean, I loved him this summer when I saw him at the Indiana Junior All-Stars. I think he would have been a terrific get for Indiana. I just think once Jerome and Demezi committed, it was you also got Justin Smith already in the program. You're targeting Romeo Langford. Yeah. You're getting into having too many guys at the same position that do the same things on the roster, so you can't get them all. He's a great kid. I think he'll be obviously well liked, and he'll be a really productive player at Michigan State. But there's so much talent in Indiana that some of these kids are going to go elsewhere. You just hope, I think, if you were asking me to choose between are they better off taking a guy like Aaron Henry, or are they better off getting Jerome Hunter? 10 times out of 10, I would tell you that they made the right choice with Jerome Hunter, just watching both play and comparing how I project them out. So I think it's a great get for Michigan State, but I think Indiana did well for themselves as well.
One last question for you, Alex. So obviously, now some of the suspense is taken out of recruiting with, the one scholarship left. Obviously, Indiana's waiting for Romeo. We need to be patient there. And, of course, all Indiana fans will, pay attention to any word that is uttered or written about that recruitment. But the savvy Indiana basketball fan, what will he or she be watching now during the fall recruiting period? Is this where you really want to pay attention to, what guys in the class of 2019 is the staff visiting? Like, what are the important things now to pay attention to if you really want to stay up to date on recruiting?
Yeah, I would pay attention this period here, who they go and see in 2019. Obviously, we know who's near the top of the board with Keon Brooks and Trace Jackson Davis. They went and saw him as soon as possible. Those guys have been on campus already this fall. I would definitely keep a close eye on both of those situations. And then with Romeo, it's one of those things where everyone wants to know right now, is Indiana moving up the list? Is Indiana in the same spot? Is someone else the leader? I don't, I've said this before, and I'll probably say it again many times before the decision is made. I just don't think that they're in decision-making mode at this point, and I think it's going to be a long wait. So if you're kind of waiting on pins and needles for any small Romeo Langford update, I think you kind of need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, this one's probably going to the spring. I think Indiana's obviously got a chance, but I know fans, and this is great. This is why we do this podcast, because they're so engaged and they're interested in everything, and I think it's terrific. But in a situation like this, I just think it's one of those things where you're going to have to be patient and see where it ultimately ends up. And I would not, there's going to be twists and turns along the way. There's going to be visits. There's going to be things that maybe don't look good for Indiana. There's going to be things that maybe look good for Indiana. But ultimately the kid's going to make the decision that he feels is best for him. And we'll find out where that is. The one thing I will say is, hopefully, wherever he goes, people support him, because, being from New Albany as I am, and kind of watching this kid grow up and develop over the last 4 years has been just a really a cool thing from my perspective, because he's handled it so well. Just a really good, down to earth, nice, pleasant, respectful kid, and hopefully, regardless of where he ends up, Indiana fans should be rooting for him. Obviously, not if he goes somewhere else, not when he's playing the Hoosiers, but he's a kid I think that is going to be special for a long time. Whether or not he ends up in Indiana, it'd be great to have him, but if not, his career will be fun to follow for the years to come.
Yeah, if the Langfords ever wanted to make a quick buck, they should release like weekly power rankings of Romeo's recruiting list. Just put it behind a paywall. How many IU fans would subscribe to that just to see what? Yeah, because like you said, I mean, everybody is going to be talking about, is Indiana the leader? Ooh, they're gaining ground on Louisville, and all this stuff, and it's like he probably doesn't even know. So all the speculation's crazy. But it would just be funny to see a recruit's family do. Now that you wouldn't want to do that because you might be ineligible, but it would be funny to see someone do something like that.
Well, I mean, just in this week alone, it's been, Friday, obviously the news broke that he's going to be coming to Hoosier Hysteria, but he's also going to Late Night with Roy at North Carolina. Vanderbilt had an in-home visit over the weekend. I won't be surprised if he shows up at Louisville for a football game sometime soon. They got a big football game this weekend against Clemson. Game day is going to be there. I'm not saying he's going to be there or not. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get him over there for something like that. I mean, there's just you can't read into every single thing that comes out. I mean, everyone in the summer before he went and played for Team USA with Calipari was like, oh, this is going to be how Kentucky closes the deal. They're going to get him. And then all of a sudden afterwards, it wasn't maybe the greatest experience, and now Kentucky's out. So, like I said, it's September 12th as we sit here. If he's not going to decide until the spring, we've got a good, 7 months before this thing really finishes. It could be longer than that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. All right, Alex, thanks for your time. We appreciate y'all listening. Hey, real quick, too, just wanted to make a quick request. For those of you who listen on iTunes, which is now Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you listen, number one, if you can subscribe to the show, that way you make sure that you get all the most recent episodes as soon as they come out. Plus, the subscriptions actually helps our show rank a little bit higher. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating or a review and letting people know what you like about the show, those actually help us out a lot because we go through and look at those, and we like to know what you like about the show so that we can obviously make sure that we do more of that. And if you have any other comments, definitely leave them there in reviews because we love to see those. So whether you're on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, if you can subscribe and leave us a rating or a review if you're enjoying what we're doing here on Podcast on the Brink, we would greatly appreciate that. And we'll be back next week with another brand new episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of Podcast on the Brink. We always appreciate you being here. To get more from me and from Alex, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com for complete coverage of Indiana University basketball. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or family member who loves IU basketball as much as you do. You can also support the show by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, which helps us get the word out to more IU fans like yourself. We'll be back next week with another brand new episode. Until then, as always, go Hoosiers.